From the world of AV programming and control with James King, I'm Steve Greenblatt, and this is Ask the Programmer. James, how are you today? I'm glad to be back and looking forward to another episode.
Oh, great to be back, Steve. I'm doing well, and yourself?
Doing well. We're recording this toward the end of the year, so it's been looking forward to a little bit of a break, and then looking forward to the holidays, and it's you know, kind of a final push for the end of the year. I'm sure you can relate.
Oh yeah, we're under the gun.
So, what one of the things, if we're talking about the end of the year, James and I had a chance to reflect back and look at past few years where we've been recording and um, take a look at the content library we've built. And if we go back and look at some of our most downloaded episodes. One of the ones that surfaces both on the audio and on the video side, and we've done two different versions of it as the future of AV programming. One is episode 3, and the other one is episode 64. So we thought we would revisit that and see if actually one of them is episode 4. I'm sorry, I said 3. Um, so we would revisit that and see what the current version of that episode is, and maybe talk a little bit about why that is highly downloaded. And it's good to see it's one of the episodes that kind of stands apart from the rest. So, um, from my perspective, I think that anything when you're talking about the future of anything, people want to learn more about it, and I'm glad that they want to hear about it from us, James. So, what are your thoughts about either the what listeners might want to hear, or what might be upcoming from the perspective of AV programming?
My first initial thought is when I realized that those two were our most popular downloaded, on YouTube and um, the audio side. I was like, are people just trying to listen to see if we're wrong about the future? Because but then we got value. We bring things, and we do have an audience who are sticking with us for these episodes. So there got to be value there. So it make me rethink of okay, what are we talking about? How are we forecasting the future of AV programming? And I will preference this with like, of course, no one has a magic crystal ball. No one really saw COVID coming. Um, and we used to say, oh, plan 5, 10 years in advance. And now it's like, all right, you got to do like 12 months. Um, yeah, so it definitely the future AV program. I think I would say probably now it's that I think we're moving away from the 5, 10 year plan, like what's really coming down the line, and really looking at the short term goals of the future, and especially with AI coming. I know a lot of people are saying, "Oh, AI is going to replace programming." That's a whole another topic, I would say. I don't think we have the um the time to dive into that really tonight. But yeah, it's just I think the future AAV programming is going to come short. It's going to come quick, and it's not going to be one of these long out, dragged out 5, 10 year plans.
Yeah, I would imagine that when we talked about this the first time, programmers were interested to understand what they should be learning and what is what 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 what's next for them, and what we're thinking they are going to need to be able to know or have expertise in order to prolong their career or to get involved in building their future career. So I think to me that's why this episode may have been particularly popular. And what's nice is that it came up more than once in two different episodes, and that's very encouraging. And it's also nice to know that our back library even though we've evolved a bit and we've had many conversations. I mean, AI wasn't even in the picture when we recorded probably the first episode, and and then even the second one was, the beginning of our second year in 2022. So AI was probably just being talked about, and even though it's existed, but from a mainstream perspective, we those things are not really weren't really in the landscape. And I know we talked a bit, and we have in the past, about mainstream programming languages, and that's always been a theme that we come back to for several reasons. But um, we also um, need to think about, how can programming be done maybe by people that aren't really coders, and configuration is part of that. But but like you said, if you perhaps the future now is almost describing what you want to do and letting AI write the code for you based on what 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 you're um, saying in English, or what you're defining, and perhaps the future is not going to be writing code at all. Who knows?
Yeah, and I know we talked about this on one episode where we actually asked Chat GPT, to break down the time that programmers spend on programming, and it was a low percentage. Uh, so with the advancement of tools like AI and other advancements in our tools, we that number could go down even more because then we're spending our time, we're more efficient in the programming side of things. So, like they always say, is if you free up time on this end, what are you going to fill it with on the other end? So, does that mean us programmers need to build new skills? Do we need to add in AI prompt skills, or do we need to add on, CAD drawing skills or other skills that we're not spending as much time on programming, even though it was a little in the beginning, if, a little in as already. We still need to fill our time. So, what is that time going to be filled with? And is the programmers ready to take on those skills?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and it also makes me think about how is how does this impact user interface or user experience too, and is that something that is going to be more um, in the custom realm, where it requires more focus from a human, or is that going to be something that becomes more automated because AI can tell you based on a profile that you put in what is the a uh, optimized user interface, or what are the best practices, or or based on results that it can come up with, how does it define that outcome. That might be an interesting idea too, and I didn't mean for this to be an AI episode, but
Um,
yeah.
yeah. But that's a real to kind of bring this away from the AI and into the program, but that's a real good point there, Steve, is talking about the user experience, the user interface, because I don't know about you, Steve, but I'm seeing more and more, especially on the younger, more from IT side of things. And yes, I came from IT. This is not going to be one of those discussion there, but I'm seeing more, I guess the way I could say it, cold practice to UI. It's like, this is what it is, and you deal with it instead of being like, a little more softer, working with the user. I see a lot of saying they try to shoehorn everybody into one box. Like, what works for my university is not gonna work for another university, but I see more and more, like, younger, coming in, and companies are trying to push, "Well, this is a template we use everywhere, you just use it,"
Hmm.
and shoehorn you in. So, that's a real interesting. I can see maybe for us programmers, we need to get that voice to talk about the UI and, UX a little more, and less writing code.
I mean, you bring up a good point, and it's probably something that we should make as a standalone episode. But it's, when when do you um, re revise, or what's involved in redefining your standard templates, or your standard system types, or and I'm sure we've talked about that similarly, but there's a lot of work that would have to go into, even though it may not be ideal, replacing something that people have gotten used to using, and having to have them learn something new, even if it's more modern, or more advanced, or even more efficient. There you'd have to redo a lot of the existing work, and then the second is that you have to still teach people, or give them the time to learn and get comfortable with it. Um, so that's probably a good future episode for us to look at as well.
Mm.
The
So
you know the One of the things that I know has been discussed quite a bit in this past year has been um, creating standards, and I know that's an ongoing conversation for a lot of things, whether it's standard API, or whether there is a universal way of doing things, and I know that something like that would certainly help make programming a lot more predictable, a lot more routine, and a lot more commonplace for people to implement. Do you think that that's something that we'll see some, at a future time?
if you ask me probably during those 2 episodes, my answer would be different than what it is today. Um, my knee-jerk reaction, and especially the folks who really know me, I have been screaming from the, rafters about standards in AV from day one, when I got involved in AV, and again, my situation came from non-programming, but it was, so AV where it really boggled my mind when I was wiring up, some XLR cables to a DSP. So I had to cut the ends off the cable for the pins because it's doing the bare wire, and I had 5 cables I had to do. So, cut the wire, the first one, brought the sheet out, got a red, a white, and a black cable. And I was like, all right, red is user hot, white your common, black your ground. Nope, that didn't work. So I figured it out. Okay, it's these. No problem. I was like, it didn't make sense to me, but all right. I noted it, wired it up, thing's working. Got the next cable, cut it, blue, yellow, green. Like, what? Like, it's an XLR cable. Like, I came from the IT world, Cat 5 cable. Doesn't matter what company I bought it from, they're all the same colors, the same, they might be a little different shades, hard to tell, but they're all the same color. I'm like, okay, I gotta do this for all 5 cable, find out which one's the hot, which one's the common, which one's the ground. And it's like standards not there. So I've been yelling that. And then I went to a conference where I actually was a moderator for a panel, and we kind of got talking about standards in AV. And one of the panelists brought up a good point, and they were saying that some of the problem with coming out with a standard in AV, which again, good point, but doesn't mean I fully think we need to abandon the ship, is if we want product A and product Z to talk to each other, you know? They're different companies. We come with a standard protocol, great. But what if something's not working? Then who do you call? Who's responsible for it? And the panelists brought up a good point is the person who answers the phone. It may be company Z's issue, but company A answers the phone and it's now them dealing with it. And so it brought a good point. I can see it from their end. It's like that's why they really push those ecosystem because you know it's our product. If there's a problem with we're gonna answer it. We can't answer a problem with another product. And but you know what? Like we live in the IT world. Like if I'm using Microsoft Outlook or I'm using Gmail or if I'm using Yahoo or whatever mail system, I still get email from someone using a different one. So why can't we do that in AV? It's not like, okay, I didn't get that. Now I'm calling Microsoft.
Right. Right. Yeah. I, uh, I think that we will find a time where we're going to get closer. I don't know. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time and it's never, it it's always been discussed and people have complained but I think that the more we are on the network and the more are growing closer to IT or the more pressure we get to have um, be looked at as endpoints and have common protocols and maybe make products naturally talk to each other of different brands that's going to be a big advancement because in the end and if we look at it from a client's perspective that there's a big benefit to a client and that's where I think the pressure is going to come in. So the ones that are going to make that move. And there are the different groups like SDVOE that's trying to do that for video over IP solutions. That there's going to be product types that work together. I do think that that's the direction we're going to go in, but whether or not we get there, I'm not sure because it comes down to sometimes manufacturers protecting their assets too. So um, I'm not quite sure, but if in wrapping up and looking at what the future of AV programming looks like, there's part of me that still wants to say that mainstream programming is going to be be part of the solution or be part of the future. But then there's the other part of me that says that good configuration solutions, if they are done right and they can accomplish a lot of the functionality, they're also going to be looked highly upon. And while those are very different ends of the spectrum, I think that there's certainly going to be a place for both of them. And as you said, the whole idea of being a prompt engineer or maybe being kind of that utility person that knows how to use one solution and when to use it versus another solution and when to use it and kind of and has that expertise of the forethought of what is going to be right for a particular client or application. Those are going to be skill sets that I think are going to be highly valued in the future.
I would say probably like my summary on this is we don't know what's coming down the future. Like started off, we don't have balls. We don't have any NDAs that were under that telling us the future of AV programming. We're all speculating here. But the one thing I do know, and I know we have mentioned this numerous times on our episodes, is we can't dig our feet in and lock ourselves into one way of doing things. If if you're programming only brand X, you need to advance your skills. You need to look at other programming languages. You got to look at configurator versus custom programming. You got to look at company A, B, C, D, all for the gamut. Look at prompt engineering because in the tech field, if you ever become stagnant on one area, that's when you become irrelevant. I mean, I still laugh. They did have it at the end, but it still happened with COBOL programmers. They COBOL is a dead language. I wonder how many of our listeners actually know what COBOL is. Um, the government actually fired all their COBOL programmers, let them go. They couldn't find other jobs. But the funny thing I found about that hilarious as it shows you our government was there were still systems running COBOL and they ran into a problem. And then they were like, we need COBOL programmers and couldn't find any.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very much remember that.
Yeah. So,
So I'm not sure if we're going to see that in AV, but I certainly think that that the core AV knowledge is certainly going to be needed into the future, and understanding what works and what doesn't work, and having that history, no matter how programming gets done, being able to apply the knowledge and know what makes a good solution is I think going to be very applicable.
no, I agree. I agree.
Well, good place for us to wrap this one up. And, we're approaching a new year, so we appreciate you listening out there. And we certainly want to know what you think about this episode and other episodes. And, take a look at some of your favorites from years past. And we'd be glad to speak about them. Or if you'd like to be a guest and speak about them yourself, please reach out to us. But it's great to know that a lot of the content that we've done several years ago still lives on, and we appreciate everyone listening and still valuing it. James, how could people get in touch with you, learn what you're up to, and continue this conversation?
You can get a hold of me. Again, I'm on X as AV_James King. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on LinkedIn, especially in our community in LinkedIn. Again, if you Google me, you'll find me.
Excellent. And for me, you can reach me at Steve Greenblatt on social media. My company, Control Concepts, is a supporter of this show, and we help programmers get their projects done by developing building blocks to integrate products as well as provide added functionality. And more information can be found at controlconcepts.net. We would really like to see you join our LinkedIn group. As James said, it's called Ask the Programmer, and that's where we will have additional conversations, and you can meet other listeners and other people who are uh, really fans of the show, and make connections and speak more about the topics that we've covered. You could also reach out to us and let us know what you'd like us to be covering in the future, and we'd be glad to hear from you and appreciate if you would share your favorite episode. We can be found on YouTube in the video version or audio on your favorite podcast player. And until next time, this has been Ask the Programmer.